Hey guys, how you doing today? Just here with my little floof. Yeah, say hi, Milo. Say hi. Hey, how you doing, buddy? Uh, Big news today coming out of Minneapolis. The big news being that the City Council of Minneapolis has voted and agreed to defund the Minneapolis police and set up a new institution that's focused on the needs of the citizenry. My immediate response was, well, all they have to do is do better than actively murdering civilians in public. And they'll do fine. And that really is where the bar is set, and that's how low the bar is. That's why the defund the police argument fundamentally works. That's the backbone of the defund the police sentiment. Literally all you have to do is better than actively murdering citizens in the street. If you think that you can put together an institution of local citizens who will not actively murder citizens in the street, then you're going to have a successful initiative. One of the things I think I look forward to in probably 2-3 years' time, put a pin in this particular video because I bet in 2-3 years' time people will be saying, oh, well, there's an increase in crime that's happening. Look at the increase in crime. More people are calling in to report incidents of crime. And I'm going to have to sit here and be like, no, that crime always happened. Those events always occurred. It's just that people didn't call the police to help handle the situation because they knew that the police would show up and publicly murder them. If the institution is built so that when people show up, they actually assist and they actually are helpful, and they don't just actively murder someone in public, then it is far more likely that more crimes and more difficult situations that occur in the public will actually be reported and will actually need to be and the institution that we erect will actually be able to participate actively in those situations. So put a pin in it. That's my call. Because the ownership class is not just going to let this event go. They're not just going to sit there and be like, oh, they got rid of the police or they're defunding the police. That seems fine. Right? They're going to attack that. They're going to attempt to discredit it. They're going to attempt to tear it down. They're going to make sure that they're going to make sure it gets demonized in other states. They're going to make sure that it doesn't spread. And if they can make it fail in Minneapolis itself, they absolutely will do that without any underhanded method they could come up with. So there is, because this is a seminal moment. It's an enormous moment in American history. This could be, like, people are going to look at Minneapolis and we're going to be talking about the data that comes out of this for 50 years. Or more. We're going to be looking at what happened in Minneapolis, and we're going to see almost immediately, actually, people are going to be talking about the improvements to the society, or the way it's affected the society, the negative consequences of which is going to come down to the capitalist propaganda, right? Which is what we need to be ready for. We need to be ready for that capitalist propaganda line, right? Capitalist propaganda operates. So first of all, they may just ignore it. So they'll never report on it. They'll never report on well, I shouldn't say they may do this. They definitely will do this. They will not report on the impact. They will not report on the effect that defunding the police department has had on the city. They won't talk about it unless they can frame it as something negative. That if there is some kind of event or conflagration or something like someone has a gun and kills one of these new employees, one of these citizen safety people who they're probably going to create positions and roles for, and that's going to be the talking point. That'll be on the news cycle, right? Someone some just situation gone wrong, which always happens, and it will just be blown up completely out of proportion to an absolute ridiculous level, in order to discredit this whole movement. And you can already see white Republicans just be like, sometimes you just need a good guy with a gun. Sometimes you just need a good guy with a gun. And you can already see them saying that kind of stuff. And I think that it will be good for the city of Minneapolis, strictly because the people should be... The people who are doing the policing should live in the communities that they are policing. I think that that's just, bar none, there should not be an exception to that. That simply by turning it into a more community-focused and a more local kind of affair, instead of this, out-of-neighborhood, centralized kind of Judge Dredd style policing, I think that shift by itself will pay dividends, will definitely improve the situation and definitely make things a lot better for the people of Minneapolis. Again, I just circle back on, the bar is so low, it can't be lower, right? Literally the bar is just make sure you don't publicly execute people. And if that's where you're working from, then there's no there's no argument left, right? The neoliberal establishment doesn't have an argument remaining. Why not defund the police? What's the worst that's going to happen? What's the worst that's going to happen if you defund the police? Are people going to execute one another publicly in the street like they're already doing? Are there going to be big protests and riots like there already are? Is there going to be looting like there already is? Maybe the individuals involved in the organization that they set up to replace the police force will set bricks up in places maybe they'll incent riots. Maybe they'll cause property damage and do looting themselves in order to incentivize the population and to incite riots themselves. Oh wait, all of that's already happening, right? You can't do worse. You actually cannot do worse. How could they possibly do worse, right? How could it possibly be worse than what they currently have? And I think there are more and more people who are just coming around and see, certainly the black communities, I think, are starting to piece that, put that little puzzle piece together and say, there's literally no way it could be worse. So the elimination and the defunding of the police force makes absolute sense to me. If you're living in the city of Minneapolis, there's no reason to have this institution around. It should just go. When they burnt that precinct down, most Americans agreed that that was justified. There's no reason to have any of these precincts in that city any longer. Those should be, turn those into community centers. Turn those into something that might actually be useful, instead of filling them with people who are walking around publicly murdering people and inciting riots and looting. It's just insane. There's absolutely no sense that the police department at any moment actually worked for the benefit of the people living there. In what capacity is that true? How could you possibly believe that the police forces work for the benefit of the people if that's the way they're acting? It's insane. And I just think that, if Minneapolis wants to set up some kind of new institution, Godspeed. Go to it. Because you can't do worse. You just literally can't do worse. Yeah. That's the big news. Okay, this was a short one. Uh, I think that this kind of thing could spread. The protests, there's no sign that the protests are abating. One thing I do think about, and I was talking to a friend about this, and they were absolutely right, which is if there is a second wave of COVID, they're going to blame it on the protests. And they're going to use that second wave of COVID as an excuse to clear the protests out. That's something that I think we're going to see. I know I've been reading a couple articles here and there from the World Health Organization that's doubtful that there will be a second wave. But here in Canada, the BC government has been very aware and astute in their predictions, and their models show that a second wave is possible. So if there is a second wave, and it's likely that if a second wave were to happen, it would originate in America, given the total lack. Like, Americans have just decided that the COVID-19 crisis is over. They're just like, back to work, let's go. And it's very much the same here in Canada. People have just decided that it's done, and that there's nothing to worry about. And so I feel like a second wave is pretty likely, and when that second wave occurs, they will absolutely use that as an excuse to clear the protesters out. Meanwhile, of course, white people will be allowed to walk down the boardwalk or go to Trinity Bellwoods or go to the park or whatever, and no one will bat an eyelash and they won't give a shit about that. But black protesters, that's got to stop. Oh, well. Only time will tell. We're in very strange and uncertain times. Good luck out there. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, do all the things, hit the dings, all that kind of stuff. It just makes me feel good. That's all. I don't want to become like a king or an emperor or like get famous or anything. It just makes me feel good that somebody out in the world actually thinks the same way that I think, and is interested in joining the discussion in the way that I like. Just makes me feel nice. Oh, and if you're going to write an insult to me, I'm going to clap back at you. Have fun.